Hi guys, Treeb Squire here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Doom. The last time we saw a fully fledged game in the franchise was back in 2004 with Doom 3, although there was a standalone expansion, Resurrection of Evil, released later on. Nearly 12 years later, id Software have finally released their follow-up, which is more of a reboot of the series. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the different options and graphical settings, as I already covered this in a previous video, for which there's a link in the description, but before I kick things off, I will briefly talk about the game's performance. Unfortunately, as is often the case with AAA games these days, there is no SLI support at launch, so the performance review is based on it running on a single 980 Ti. The good news is that despite this, the game seems very well optimised, running at 1440p with ultra settings. The game rarely drops below 70 frames per second and often sits around the 80 to 90 mark, sometimes going above 100 frames per second. Later in the game, when things get extremely chaotic, the frame rate did drop to around the 60 mark and occasionally below, but it still felt quite smooth. The developers have said that SLI support is coming, but no ETA as of yet, not that I know of anyway. Graphically speaking, the game certainly looks decent with good texture detail, lighting and fluid animations. It's certainly not the best looking game out there, or even the best looking game so far this year, but it does the job. Much like the original Doom, the game wastes absolutely no time in giving you a gun and letting you loose on the demonic hordes. There is a very loose story here, but it's not really a selling point of the game. Oh no. The meat and potatoes of the game is the combat, and it really is a thing of beauty. I must confess, when I heard that no review copies were going to be released of the game, I instantly felt a sense of dread and was quick at pointing towards this being due to the lack of confidence in the product, but I have to put my hands up and say that I made a misjudgment here. Doom is a no-nonsense, balls-to-the-wall shooter that keeps a lot of the original game's sensibilities, whilst also adding a few modern touches for this generation of gamers. One of the main changes here is around the upgrade system, which you're introduced to not long after you start the campaign. This covers not only your suit but also weapons, and there's even a rune system which gives you additional perks. To unlock the suit upgrades you have to find, and I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, Praetor points. These are scattered around each level on the corpses of fallen soldiers. The upgrades can vary from taking less damage from certain elements like barrel explosions to showing all of the collectibles on the map. I found this one particularly useful as I'm an unobservant swine and couldn't find a lot of them for love nor money. Not for lack of trying though. To upgrade your weapons you do this by completing challenges which are set at the start of each level, and also the game gives you points based on how well you fight. There are also small robots scattered around that let you pick one of two upgrades for each weapon. The runes are collected by completing challenges, which are also scattered around the game's fairly expansive levels. These unlock certain perks within the game and also have their own challenges to unlock. Lastly, there are also Argent cells, which can permanently upgrade your health, armor or ammo. Some of the other hidden items are collectibles like small Doom figures and even guns you would normally get later in the game. There are doors you can unlock from hidden levers, which open an area of the level designed like the original Doom games, which is a nice touch. I'm someone who absolutely detests collectibles and hidden items in games, but I found myself actually enjoying looking for a lot of these, and the challenges themselves are quite fun, varied, and help break the game up a bit. A lot of purists may scoff at the idea of perks and upgrades in a Doom game, but I have to say, they really did add a lot to the game and help mix things up a bit. And that's something the developers have done exceptionally well with the game. Just when it starts to feel a bit stale, you encounter a new enemy type or discover a new gun, and it starts to liven things up a bit. Speaking of the guns, most of the ones you'd expect from previous games are here, and they feel great. I've found myself using every single gun in the game throughout the whole campaign, as they all have their uses and are better used against certain enemy types. Once an enemy is near death, you can also perform a takedown on them, which causes them to drop items. Despite seeing these takedowns hundreds of times throughout the game, I never found myself getting bored of them, as they're so beautifully brutal and satisfying to watch. Later in the game you also come across power-ups which range from temporary invincibility to berserker mode, where you can instantly take down enemies. There is a surprising amount of strategy involved in the combat. The levels are quite large, and a lot of the time you can observe your surroundings before entering a fight, and you have to consider things like when to use certain more powerful guns and power-ups. For example, you have a chainsaw which can instantly kill enemies and cause them to drop ammo for all of your guns, but using it once on the tougher enemies uses all of your fuel, so you have to weigh up when's the best time to use it. The same goes for the power-ups. You may see one that gives you quad damage lying around, but a lot of the times it's best to wait until you absolutely need it before using it, as the effect doesn't last that long and you may face tougher enemies later on in the battle. All of these elements combined makes combat thrilling, and later in the game, after particularly hectic battles with huge varieties of different enemy types being thrown at you, I'd just sit back and chuckle to myself at how intense that just was. The campaign itself is also surprisingly long. I spent a reasonable amount of time looking for the collectibles throughout the first half of the game, and it took me about 16 hours to complete in total. If you try to collect all of the hidden items and complete rune challenges as well, then you're probably looking at a good 20 plus hours. The story, whilst a bit thin, was interesting enough to keep me engaged, and there are some fantastic boss battles later in the game. Yes, that's right, actual boss battles. None of this QTE crap that you get a lot of in first-person shooters these days. The latter half of the game has some one-off encounters with more powerful enemies, and I enjoyed the hell out of them. No pun intended. And I suppose that leaves me with the multiplayer. Now, to be honest, I haven't played an arena-type shooter in many years, but I did have a brief go with Dooms, and it's not entirely awful. There's a decent number of modes, however my biggest gripe, like most who loved the arena shooters of old, is that you can only carry 2 guns at a time, which are unlocked through the game by earning experience. It's a very Call of Duty-esque system and seems very out of place in a game that's trying to appease fans of old school shooters. In summary, the Doom single player is an excellent throwback to shooters of old and has some of the most satisfying combat I've experienced in, well, since Wolfenstein. It's a great mixture of old and new and hits all of the right notes. The multiplayer is a bit of a throwaway and it's a bit disappointing to see that there's no SLI support at launch, but these are my only real complaints with the game. For me, it's a jolly good 4 out of 5. If you're hankering for a good single player shooter, then you can't really go wrong with Doom. If you liked this video, please let me know with a like and subscribe, or a dislike if you thought it was crap. Thanks for watching and hopefully see you on the next one.